Assembly has made it to halftime with the House and the Senate both home now or out of Springfield for the next 2 weeks. So this is really our kind of last best chance before the likely adjournment at the end of May for us to get district visits. So we really do need folks with the major floor votes on our package, most of them still ahead of us. We really do need folks to try to get into district offices if you haven't been able to do that yet. Good news to report actually on that. House Bill 6202, the net metering, what's now the net metering task force proposal, passed the House this week, so it's over in the Senate. So we want to be asking senators to co-sponsor House Bill 6202. That joins House Bill 5429, the Solar Bill of Rights, which is will be ready for the Senate to take up when they come back too. We do have a deadline extension, excuse me, through April 15th in the Senate for Senate Bill 3686, which is the main vehicle for this proposal. House Bill 6013 is still in the House, but our sponsor there, Deborah Graham, has been appointed to the Chicago City Council, so she's going to be leaving the General Assembly, one would think, before they return in April. So we don't expect that bill to be the vehicle for the solar ramp-up legislation. Senate Bill 3686 is going to be considered by the Senate Energy Committee after the break, and so we still very much need Senate co-sponsors on that legislation as a show of support. It's okay, I suppose, to have members co-sponsor still House Bill 6013, but we at this point don't expect that to move. But until the Senate Bill 3686 comes over from the Senate, House Bill 6013 is still a way for reps to show support for solar energy. Our clean water legislation, House Bill 6099, passed the Illinois House today by a vote of, I think it was 105 to 2. And so that moves over to the Senate, which is great. If you look, you'll see an amendment on there. We basically have an agreement now with this legislation. The amendment is not perfect. The bill moved out of the House because the deadline was upon us. I think you'll see another amendment in the Senate dealing with the manner in which local governments can still move forward after this bill is signed with local ordinances dealing with fertilizer that are justified by local water quality. Noland has picked it up, and so we're going to be able to work on the fine print of House Bill 6099. And then finally, the BPA bills, most of the action has been on the Senate bill, although both the Senate and the House bills are poised for a vote when the legislature returns from break, and both votes look like they're going to be very close. So we are right around or above the margin of votes we need to pass these bills, but the industry is really lobbying hard. I've got here at the end of this update, you'll see a short clip with one of the BPA researchers who was in Springfield this week talking to legislators. That'll be up here right next. But again, please, if you have not been able to make your appointment yet, let's really try to get in this 2-week spring break. And if you did make your appointment and it's been some time, if you had an appointment, say, back in February, this would be a great time to check in with your legislator about either the commitments they made or questions they had, and just touch base before they head back to Springfield, because the legislatures, at least the leaders, are still talking about trying to be adjourned by May, I think, 8th. So they're really, if they stick to that schedule, only going to be about, I think, 4 legislative weeks left after the spring break. So things may move very quickly here, and we'll have a short amount of time to wrap up our priorities here. So thanks for everything you've done in the first half. We have some ground to make up in the second half, but the good news is that all our issues are still alive, and our sponsors are intent on seeing them move after the break, and it's up to us to make sure that their colleagues are hearing from folks like us back home. So thanks for everything you've been doing along those lines up to this point, and let's carry this stuff across the finish line. Okay. Okay. Your name again, please.
My name is Fred Vumsal. I'm a professor of biology at the University of Missouri in Columbia, Missouri.
And your area of your discipline is?
I do research on the effects of chemicals such as bisphenol A on fetal development and the long-term disease consequences of exposure during fetal life.
And what have some of your basic, talking points been with legislators today?
That this is an 8 billion pound a year chemical that should never have been approved for use in food packaging, particularly for babies. It was approved over 40 years ago, and at a time when nobody knew anything about the fact that these chemicals acted like sex hormones. And now it's related to prostate cancer, breast cancer, brain damage, damage to every reproductive organ, inflammatory diseases like asthma and allergy, and obesity, diabetes, and heart disease. These are all human diseases that are going up exactly related to the use of chemicals such as bisphenol A. The idea that we're making packaging out of a sex hormone is so incredible when you actually say to people, do you think this is rational? They look at you as if you're a crazy person. And it turns out our Food and Drug Administration grandfathered all these chemicals approved in the 1960s and has no authority to regulate them. And that's why I'm here talking to state legislators, because these laws have to be passed at the state level. Our federal government is really not able to move rapidly on any of these issues. And so hopefully the states will do what they did with cigarette smoking. They'll take the initiative rather than waiting decades for the federal government to do it.
And for the categories we're talking about, the alternatives are ready and in use in some versions of the products.
The very important part of the legislation being proposed here about BPA, which is this chemical that acts like an estrogen, a sex hormone, and is used in food packaging, is for every use of BPA in the legislation, there are already on the market alternatives. So there's no reason to allow these products to remain being made with bisphenol A when we know it's extremely dangerous and there are alternatives that are already available and in use in the United States.
And what kind of response are you getting from legislators that you're talking to?
What you find is a divergence where some people say, yes, I know there's a lot of information and I want to protect our children. The unique problem we face here is, unlike other countries like Japan, where the chemical industry voluntarily took bisphenol A out of the lining of cans, took it off of the surface of receipt paper, took it out of schoolrooms so it's not being used in any kind of packaging product or plastic plates. They all did that voluntarily. In the United States, the American Chemistry Council is here telling legislators that the science proves this chemical is safe. The NIH, the National Institutes of Health, their recommendation, and now the current recommendation of the Food and Drug Administration, is this is not a safe chemical. And yet our corporations in the United States make up their own little bit of science. They funded 15 studies. Their studies show no harm of bisphenol A. There are about 1,000 studies showing harm. But industry just tells the legislators, oh, our studies show this is completely safe. And some people want to believe that's a real legitimate argument. It's what the tobacco industry got away with for decades. So what we're seeing is tobacco science, tobacco issue all over again with these chemicals. Industry studies conducted for litigation and regulation, not for science.
Great. Well, thanks for making the trip to Springfield. It sounds like we're very close, so I hope that it makes a difference.
I hope so too. It's for the safety of babies. This really does need to be passed.